iPhone launch week. You know what that means, right? The internet is just a hurricane of hot takes and rumors right now,
Yes.
but that's why we're here. Well, that and you sent us a mountain of articles to dig into. So
Yeah.
big question is, iPhone 16, yay or nay?
That is the question, isn't it? It's like the eternal tech dilemma. New doesn't always mean better, you know?
So true. So let's dive right into it. First up, this whole demand thing. Headlines are all doom and gloom, talking about pre-orders being down. Even Ming-Chi Kuo, the guy's like the oracle of iPhones, says sales are hurting. Bad.
Yeah, but here's where it gets interesting. It might not just be a one-off, you know? Like, it seems to connect to bigger trends we're seeing. Remember that LinkedIn post you shared about people holding onto their phones for longer and longer?
Yeah, I bet.
The average is over 3 years now.
3 years. Man, back in my day, we swapped phones whenever a new color dropped.
Right. Totally. But look, phones are just good now, you know? And with this economy doing, makes a vague gesture, whatever this is, people are thinking twice. That same post said 63% are holding back because of inflation. So it begs the question, are you feeling that, right? Like, it's a real factor when you're considering dropping $1,000 on a new device.
For sure, for sure. But then you've got folks like the CEO of T-Mobile coming in hot, calling those reports nonsense. They're saying their first week was booming.
True, but their statement was about the first week of sales, not pre-orders. Maybe people are just hesitant, especially with the whole Apple Intelligence delay. Speaking
Like
of which...
the elephant in the room, right? Or soon-to-be outdated room.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the feature, the game changer.
Yeah.
Supposedly. Except it's not actually here yet. What a gamble.
A total gamble. I mean, reviewers are already calling this iPhone one of the most unfinished products Apple's ever shipped. Can you imagine? Dropping all that cash on something where the flagship features are just IOUs.
And get this, we were looking at the data, and only 18% of people upgrade just for features. Most people wait until their current phone is basically a fossil. So yeah, it's a gamble for Apple, but it's a question for you too. Are you hyped for the potential of Apple Intelligence, or are you more of a show me what you got kind of person?
It's like, what even is it? You know, we've got these hints, these glimpses, but who knows what it'll actually be like in our hands.
It's like buying a plane ticket to, like, Metaverse land. Sounds cool, but is it going to exist when I get there?
Right. Speaking of things that may or may not live up to the hype, that camera upgrade, what's the verdict?
Is it worth the pixels it's printed on? Let's discuss.
All right. Camera deep dive time. Let's start with this new camera control button because people are losing their minds a little. A physical button on an iPhone.
You know what that means? All those old school camera nerds, they're going to be like,
Rejoicing! I know, right? But, and this is a big but, seems like the software isn't quite there yet. Accidental touches, the button's kind of stiff. You know, early adopter problems.
oh, the price of being an early bird, right?
Here.
Got to catch those worms somehow.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's talk about something that did catch my eye. This whole new way they're handling photo processing. Now that is interesting.
Oh, yeah, that is huge. See, for years now, people have been complaining iPhone photos look too perfect, too artificial.
Too much portrait mode on a ham sandwich.
Exactly. But now, Apple, the kings and queens of controlling everything, they're finally giving some of that control back to the user.
So you're saying they're admitting that whole hyper-realistic thing was maybe a little much?
Seems like it. This tone control, basically, it lets you adjust how much of that computational photography magic is happening behind the scenes. You want a more natural look, you can dial it back.
Okay, time out. For those of us who don't speak fluent tech, break it down. What's tone control? And while we're at it, remind us about this computational photography sorcery.
So basically, it's your phone's camera doing a ton of work behind the scenes. It's taking multiple shots in a fraction of a second, then using algorithms to blend them together, adjust the lighting, sharpen things up.
Is that how my selfies look so good?
You got it. But now, with this tone control, you can kind of fine-tune how much of that processing is happening. So photographers who felt like they were losing control, they're getting it back. Big win for them.
I love it. See, this is why we deep dive people. We get into the nitty gritty. But how does this all play into the whole pro versus regular iPhone debate? Because the Ferrari review made it seem like the gap is shrinking, right?
Right, like it used to be so clear-cut, you want the best camera, you go Pro. But this time around, the specs are surprisingly similar. Don't get me wrong, the Pro still has some advantages, but now it's a much harder decision.
It's like, do I need the best or just really good?
Yeah.
Decisions. And as if we didn't have enough to think about, we've got John Alexander over on LinkedIn reminding us that this isn't just about phones anymore. It's about the Apple ecosystem, baby.
And it's smart. The deeper you are in their world, their apps, their services, their cloud,
Yeah.
the less likely you are to ever leave, even if the shiniest new thing comes along.
It's true. They've got us, don't they? Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The demand mystery, Apple Intelligence being a big question mark, this whole camera situation. Anything else we got to unpack before we send our listeners off to make their big decision?
Well, we gotta talk battery life. It's always a big one. And Apple's claiming some pretty impressive gains with this generation, especially the Pro Max.
Yeah, claims. We've heard those before.
Mhm.
My current battery situation makes me feel like I'm living in the Stone Age over here.
Tell me about it. A little healthy skepticism never hurts. And of course, there's the usual iOS update goodies, customizable home screens. They're finally improving messaging with Android users.
Small victories, people. Small victories. But let's be real. The elephant in the room is always the price tag, right? These things ain't cheap.
Especially if you're going for that Pro or Pro Max. And for our listeners in Europe, just a heads up, that Verge review mentioned possible delays for Apple Intelligence over there. Something to do with those EU regulations.
Man, so much to think about. This is why I love a good deep dive, though, right? We could get into it, cut through the hype, figure out what's real.
And hopefully give you, dear listener, the information you need to make the right call.
Exactly. So, bottom line, iPhone 16, must-have upgrade. I'm going to say not so fast. I mean, Apple Intelligence is a total wild card. Until we see it in action, it's impossible to say if they live up to all the hype.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Like, if this Apple Intelligence thing really is a revolution, a totally new way to use our phones, will any of this other stuff even matter? The camera, the battery, even the price? Or are you the type of person who values the things you can see and feel right now, those tangible improvements? It's something to think about.
No doubt about it. Are we on the verge of a smartphone revolution, or is Apple just putting a fancy new case on the same old, same old? Guess only time will tell. All right, folks, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for coming along for the ride. We'll catch you next time.